All right, are you ready?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Season Ticket Holders. I'm your host, Dane Lillingstone, and I have another new and special guest back for the first time here today. He's an old friend of mine. He's a Queenslander, a local rugby champion, long-time Broncos member, and has the biggest hands of anyone I've ever met. Tim Tiny Hands Henderson. Welcome to the potty, Tim. How are you going?
Oh, mate, thank you for the introduction. I'll try and live up to that reputation. Yeah, I'm ready and raring to go.
Mate, and I can see you got your Queenslander gear on. I've obviously spent all day in New South Wales Blues camp for Fox Sports News. You've been entrenched up there in Brisbane, soaking up all of the Queensland Maroons news. We're going to dive right into that today because this is the first podcast on Inside Origin Camp. I'm going to try and kick these off over the next few weeks. I'll be in Brisbane covering the first Origin. I'll also be in Perth, and then, of course, I'll be in Sydney. So I'll be covering all three Origin games for Fox Sports and trying to bring some insider news into this podcast on Season Ticket Holders. But Tim, firstly, first time on the podcast, what I like to do is get people to tell you welcome. I like to get, you did message me, by the way, and said you want to be on, so...
Hey, well, I want to be part of the famous pod, mate. I've got to be in there.
Not yet, mate, not yet. But first time guests, I like to say, just talk to us a little bit about who you are, why you love the sport of rugby league, and why you love the Brisbane Broncos, and today, Queensland.
Cool. So my name is Tim. I kind of got into rugby league through my old man. So I remember always Friday night watching it downstairs with Dad. Remember the old tune, Friday night's the night for footy. The best soundtrack.
Great song. Wasn't it Friday night's a great night for footy? Was that it?
Oh, right. And like the guitar solo as well. But a little secret about me is I didn't start out as a Broncos fan. I started out as a Roosters fan.
I didn't know this.
So the story goes, back when I first got into footy, I was quite young and I didn't quite understand like the home team kind of like home city thing. And back in the early 2000s, when I started watching footy, the number one team was Roosters. So my childhood hero was Anthony Minicello.
Good
So
player.
But once I got my wits about myself and understood, hey, no, you're born in Brisbane, you're a Broncos fan. I'm like, shit, yeah, like this is my team. So I've been following the Broncos for as long as I can remember after that fact, but I've always had a little soft spot for the Roosters. Apart from the salary sombrero, at times it's a bit of a joke. But look, I also know one of your colleagues, Josh Bristow, quite well.
Shout out to Bristow.
I went to school with Josh, and I think I met you through the Aiden, who was in your very first podcast. So I've known both you for a while, and it's kind of seeing you both kick goals both in Queensland and New South Wales. So no, man, I've been a Broncos fan for a very long time. I've even got a horse tattooed on my arm because I'm a massive Broncos fan.
You're gonna crack that out for us, mate, for our visual.
It's you can't really see it. It's upside down there. There's a few different things going on there, mate. But look, it's been a very disappointing almost 20 years now. I think 2006. I still remember the Lockyer drifting across, and then over his shoulder goes to Hodges through the middle and scores that wonderful try. Look, I have fond memories. I also have a lot of bad memories of 2015 and 2023. It's actually quite tough being a Broncos fan.
You don't have to tell me, mate.
We've got the deepest pockets in the comp, but my Lord, we just can't seem to get a premiership, and we could just do a whole podcast on the Broncos alone. Look, it's 10 rounds in now, and it's started hot, crashed a little bit, and then we beat the Bulldogs, and everyone's like, "Oh wow, Broncos are back! Like we beat the Bulldogs. How do we do that?" And then it hasn't really been anything since.
No, it hasn't. And that Dragons performance was, I would have to say, in a word, pathetic. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the Broncos today. Thanks for sharing it, Tim. But today, of course, is all about State of Origin. Now, overnight, I'm going to go through New South Wales release their team first, like they normally do on Sunday night. I'm just going to bang right through it. The 17 here. Dylan Edwards at fullback, Brian To'o and Zach Lomax on the wings, Stephen Crichton and Latrell Mitchell in the centres, Mitch Moses and Nathan Cleary paired up in the halves, Mitch Barnett and Payne Haas as the two props, Reece Robson as hooker, Liam Martin and Angus Crichton in the second rows, Isaiah Yeo at lock and the new captain with no Jake Trbojevic, Connor Watson, Spencer Leniu, Hudson Young, and debutant Max King on the bench. Campbell Graham is the 18th man, Stefano Utoikamanu is 19th, and Hamoli Olakawatu as the 20. So that is the team. I was out there today at Blues HQ out at Homebush. Now, first impressions, I'm just going to go through first, Tim, and then I'll give you a chance. But my first impression was I was absolutely shocked that Terrell May is not there. And that's been the big talking point out of this team. I was thinking all season, I know we're super coach players too, and we do look at stats a lot, but Payne Haas and Terrell May have been the two tearaway. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm number one on the fantasy football, by the way. I just want to rub that in at the moment.
Yeah, we don't bring that up, Tim. All right. But seriously, the two form props in the competition in Terrell May and Payne Haas, I thought for sure they're locked in 8 and 10. Absolutely scary prospect as a Queenslander to see those two lining up. And for whatever reason, Terrell May has been left out of this team. Now, I was talking to Benji Marshall, all of his teammates at the West Tigers, and in the weeks leading up to this, they all couldn't speak more highly of Terrell May. They said he does all these extras. He's a great guy. He's a workhorse. He inspires the team. Benji Marshall couldn't speak high of him, and Benji can keep things pretty close to the chest. They couldn't speak more highly of Terrell May, and he's got the numbers to back it up. Him and Payne Haas, statistically, I think they're the two best offloaders in the competition, tear through meters. They can play just about 80 minutes if they had to. I know there was a bit of a discussion that maybe they're too similar, but I found it very strange that he wasn't in this team. I was at Laurie Daley's press conference this morning when he broke down the team on Monday, and he said he didn't even call Terrell May. And the quote that I thought was most telling was that he said, simply, there are better players. And he chose Max King, this debutant who deserves it in his own right, great player. But I just found that very shocking that he wasn't there. We'll get more into that soon. But did you find that shocking as well that Terrell May wasn't there, mate?
I think so. Look, if you look at the team from 1 to 17, the crazy thing is they can be stronger. And it's not based on because the players are unavailable or they're injured. Like, if you look across, like, you'd argue that Appy Coruscant on the weekend had a phenomenal game. He stepped Latrell twice as a hooker, breaking through the line. I don't know what else he could have done to get a spot over Reece Robson, who he's been good, Reece, but he hasn't been happy good. And look, you look at Payne Haas, and on his day, he's a game wrecker. And a team of 17 or 13 on a field at one time can't seem to wrap up Payne. You can see him have 3 or 4 players on him, and he's still popping the ball away. Imagine that with 2 players in the front row with May and Haas. Like, it'd be unstoppable. And they're big bodies, so it's crazy it's not in the team.
That is the thing with New South Wales, though. The bad side of them is that they get spoiled for riches. So you think in a way they almost do these wrong decisions because they've got too many players to choose from. Unlike Queensland, who've sort of had to scrape together a team, which we'll get into a little bit later. I mean, James Tedesco, arguably in the form of his career, even though he's in his early 30s, Dylan Edwards beats him out, the incumbent, which I understand. Latrell Mitchell returns for his first game. Obviously, they had to leave Jerome Luai out, who was there for all 3 games last year, to put Cleary and Moses together. I would argue Moses did make a massive difference, though, and you can't leave the best player in the competition, Nathan Cleary, out, so I understand. Mitch Barnett at prop at starting 8, that's the one I find confusing. I think that should be Terrell May's spot. And then you can't really argue with Martin, Crichton, Yeo as you're rounding out the second row. Watson, I think, a great utility. He's proven that he can do that spot. Spencer Leniu is your impact prop. Hudson Young, just about the form, second row. And then Max King, awesome player. He's come back from a lot of adversity, but I found that quite strange. But is that how you sort of see it? The Terrell May stuff too. I remember there was that stream, right? There was a stream where he said, throw the jersey in the bin. Did you know what I'm talking about? Did you see all that stuff? But
that's not story.
Yeah. So do you reckon it was partly maybe because he plays for the Tigers and maybe he is a bit outspoken? He doesn't fit that traditional mold of rugby league player?
Yeah. Look, I saw the stream stuff, and look, he's a phenomenal player. But like, you look at what happened with the Roosters, and they had to let him go. They said there was no reason behind it. He doesn't fit the culture. But then you're hearing from the West Tigers that he's a great teammate. Like, he's a fantastic He's a fantastic bloke. He works hard. So something doesn't quite add up, and it doesn't quite make sense that he's an 80-minute prop who runs 200 plus meters, makes 40 plus tackles with no losses. He's offloading. He's the way that he's running the ball in the first minute is the same in the 80th minute. Like, to have him and Haas in the same team, fantastic. Like, Barnett, don't get me wrong, Barnett's a good player. He's a very good player, but a starting prop, he's a good 20, 25-minute cameo from the bench. I wouldn't say he's a starter, but look, anything as a Queensland fan tells me, I remember Daley back in the early 2000s and how crazy he was and the dumb things he does. And when I saw that Daley got named as the new Blues coach, my first reaction was laughing, just because I remember how he was. And he hasn't done any first grade coaching since. He might have done some international stuff for some second tier nation stuff. Maybe, I don't recall, but he hasn't really been in the arena since. And the last time he was there, he was pretty poor.
You do say that, but I do have to point out that he was the coach who broke the streak, the 8 in a row, correct? He was the player who put Trent Hodgkinson and Josh Reynolds together to break that streak, was he not?
But he also, that was being a team of guys who were, what, in their late 30s, early 30s, whatever it was. Like, we're an aging team.
They
And
were,
look,
but that was a championship team, and then they ended up going back and then winning a few in a row. So I do have to play devil's advocate with you there because I know what you're talking about. Queenslanders probably did snicker a little bit when they heard that Laurie was coming back, but he obviously has the respect on the board. I know he's been more into his sports betting ads lately and all that sort of thing, but he obviously does have the runs on the board, and he's a legend of the game. I do want to just say on Terrell May, I did put that team up on our season ticket holders Instagram. I did get some comments from Jared. He was saying, as far as the Terrell May thing goes, it's a team sport. Fantasy numbers don't tell the full story. And that he thinks, does it really fit the chemistry of the team? So I'm just saying that's sort of the comments that have been put out there as well. And that is true. And he's a killer and super coach. We know that because we play it. Doesn't necessarily mean he is going to be there. I would say he would be a perfect fit for Origin, but now we're not going to know. And surely he will get his chance eventually. The other big one, mate, I suppose, was James Tedesco, Dylan Edwards. Dylan Edwards had been there. He came back in games 2 and 3 last year, the 2 games they won. Tedesco didn't do anything wrong in game 1 either, but he only came in because Edwards got injured in that lead up to that game. They were always going to drop Teddy. Dylan Edwards, what do you think of it? He hasn't been in flying form, and neither has the Panthers. But obviously, they've decided to go with the incumbency, pulled a bit of a Queensland move there, staying loyal.
Yeah, I think if you look at it logically, it kind of makes sense because you've got Cleary there at 7, you got Yo at 13. So you've got that kind of that spine that they use, minus obviously Blaze isn't there for obvious reasons, being I'm pretty sure he's a Kiwi. But the main of the spine is there, and that combination is there. Teddy is great in his own right, and he's back to like Teddy form that we know he's good for. I think it's just because of that combinations that it makes more sense having Edwards there. But look, they wouldn't take anything away from the team if they had Teddy there. I wouldn't say he'd make it better or worse. I say he'd just do a job.
Yeah, and look, Laurie was pretty tight-lipped about these players that did and didn't miss out. He didn't really give too much away. The other one we got to talk about too is Jake Trbojevic, the captain, the incumbent captain. Obviously suffered a HIA in the weekend. By all reports and everything I was hearing personally was that he was going to be back in this team, even though he only played 20 minutes. Sort of started the games last year, started all 3 games, and then would just sort of not come back on. But he was more for his spiritual leadership off the field, what he brings to the team, his defensive efforts. Obviously, he is aging a bit. It seems like he was going to come in, and if I'm looking at this team, it looks like he probably would have been the Mitch Barnett, I would say, in this team if he didn't pick up that HIA. I'd say Barnett probably would have been on the bench, and Max King probably would have been the extended squad. Obviously, I think that's how it worked out. That's just my speculation. We asked Laurie today if that was going to be the case. He remained very tight-lipped. He didn't want to reveal whether Jake was going to be in the team, understandably. And then the other player I do just want to get on is Max King himself, because he is quite an interesting story. I've got to bring it up here. I forgot how long exactly he was out of the game, but he was out for 533 days after an Achilles injury in 2021. He's also gone through 3 heart surgeries. So pretty incredible story. I got to do a one-on-one interview with him, and look, he's just Firstly, it was about his faith because he spoke about his belief in God and how he said that he was thinking about throwing the game away, but he sort of stuck with it. He didn't want to be known as just a random 50 gamer. He thought he had more, and now it's a dream come true. He was actually very, very well spoken for your traditional rugby league player. Very open, very happy. I imagine there would have been plenty of tears for him. He seems like a bit of an emotional guy, but obviously he's been a real stalwart and a workhorse for this Bulldogs team that's flying high. What do you make of his selection?
Look, I've seen him, and I remember I think it was Vossi was saying, I think he's going to score today a few weeks ago when he broke his try scoring drought. And I remember how excited Vossi was when he finally got over the line. Look, he's just a role player. Honestly, like he's not going to win you the game, but he's going to say, "Hey, mate, just run hard, run straight." He'll do a job. He's not a May. He's not a Haas. He's not a Stefano. Like he's just going to do a job and do it well. He seems like he's a very confident player, and I think it's probably maybe Crichton, even being he's the captain, had a word saying, "Hey, the captain of the Bulldogs," maybe gave it an inside scoop to Daley, saying, "Oh, if you need a prop, he's the guy you need." You never know these situations. But look, I don't think he really has bad games. Like he just does his job and he does it well, and he flies under the radar at times, and that's not a negative thing. If you're remembering him for doing a bad thing, obviously, but like I don't remember him doing good or bad. So I think he's just a good player, essentially.
That's a good point. I think he's not going to let you down. I think he'll be up for the Origin arena. He's going to do a job. He'll be fine. The other thing too with the props, Payne Haas did come in Monday to Origin camp with a quad concern. He didn't actually join them, but he was still getting scans after the Broncos Dragons game.
Mm.
He's been cleared. He should be right to go. Laurie did confirm that Stefano Utoikamano would come into that team had he been ruled out. He seems to be fine. The other one was Stephen Crichton, the Bulldogs centre. He had a groin injury that he's been battling in recent weeks. He fronted the media as well. He said he's A-OK. If anything, it's actually felt better recently. So he said he'll be all right. And then the only other player I want to touch on now for New South Wales is the halves, because I think Mitchell
Mhm.
Moses was the difference in last year's series when he came in games 2 and 3. They originally picked Nicho Hynes in game 1. Nathan Cleary missed the entire series with a hamstring injury. Jerome Luai, a little bit unlucky to miss out, but I always thought leading into this series all year, once Moses was back and fit, those two are the players you pick. Even though you could argue they're two sevens, they have two great kicking games in Origin, and Laurie did say this as well. You've got two players who are just about the best kicks in the game. They know where to put it. They're going to cause a real headache for Queensland on those fourth and fifths. They're really going to kick to corners, and they're going to put Queensland on the back foot with these two players playing off each other. What do you think of these halves?
Well, look, you think of when Moses was out, how bad the Eels were going, and the very first game that Moses came back, he was a difference maker. He was everywhere. His kicking game, his running game, everything was fantastic. And you could just see a noticeable difference when he was in the side. And like you touched on, his kicking game, his support play, he's an organizer. He actually is the all round package. I'd hate to say it, being that I don't like the Eels, but he is an all round player. He hasn't got too many flaws in his game, apart from when he dives and milks and he cries to the ref saying, "Oh, ref, he hurt my hair." Um, but yeah, look, I hate that fact about his game. He does dive a lot. He does milk a lot. He's like, "Oh no," quite often. But beyond that, he's a good player. I just can't respect him because of the diving stuff. But I gotta say, he makes a difference. And like I said, Nicho Hynes in that team last year, look, he's probably got a big fat mark through his name now, old Nicho, but he's got to think about DCE. Look, for the better part of 10 years, DCE had a big line through his name, and now he's one of the first picks. So, Nicho Hynes, if you're listening to this, mate, just have faith, look at DCE, and it can happen for you too.
Well, actually, it's interesting because I spoke to Nico. Sharks had an op late last week in Cronulla. I asked Nico, does Origin still motivate him? And I was very surprised by his response because he basically came out and said, no, it doesn't. He sort of got burnt last time, and he said he's just completely focused on club football. And normally when players say it, you think they're trying to deflect a little bit, but the way
Mm-hmm.
he said it was he was being dead serious. He's had his taste. He got trashed by the media, by players, public opinion after that appearance. He'd played like a 15-minute stint or whatever it was off the bench in the first game. And then he got his chance to start in that first game, which they lost, was Joseph Swatali'i taking Reece Walsh's head off and sort of ruining that game. But yeah, look, feel for him. Even Ronaldo Mulitalo came out and said you guys, as in the media, sort of spun your stories last year, and I think got in his head a little bit. But anyway, different story. And just on the media, I can confirm something for us as well. Latrell Mitchell is on a media ban. We already sort of understood this. There was talk in the media. There was an article released during the week that talked about this. He hasn't done an interview. I think it's something like mid last year since he's actually spoke to the media, to Channel 9 and things like that. I think he has spoken with some Fox sideline reporters, but we did speak to New South Wales today. There was an opportunity to speak to every single player in the team except Payne Haas because he was still awaiting scans and wasn't to get there till later in the afternoon. Latrell Mitchell, we were told, was doing photos, and we pushed further and basically were told that he would not be speaking to the media as he's been doing for the Rabbitohs all season, and that any issue would have to be taken up with the NRL. So that's the story with Latrell Mitchell. We're not going to hear from him. It's unfortunate for fans and the media. Even after he had an absolute blinder for the Rabbitohs against the Broncos a few weeks ago, he just went straight off the field when he scored that late try and kicked the winning field goal as well. So I can confirm Latrell Mitchell, no media for Origin. So there you have it.
A big scoop there.
There you go. Now, mate, look into the Queensland team. Of course, I'm going to admit it. I was shocked. I was shocked to read this team. I'm going to go through it, but there is one name that really stood out. I'm just going to go through it now. Kalen Ponga at fullback, Xavier Coates and Valentine Holmes on the wings, Robert Toya in the centres. I did not think in a million years I'd see that. Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow as the other centre. Cam Munster and Daley Cherry-Evans, obviously Bracker's captain, and in the halves together, Mo Fotuaika and Tino Fasamula-Awi as your starting props. Harry Grant back from injury in the first game of the weekend. Ruben Cotter and Jeremiah Nane in the second row. Paddy Carrigan at lock. Then on the bench, Tom Dearden, well-deserved as the 14. Lindsay Collins, Beau Fermor, and Trent Lareo rounding out the bench. Kurt Mann is the 18th man. Jesse Arthas, another name I wouldn't expect. And Finifakaiki. I should have learnt that name before I did that as a 20th man. But looking at the team, there's just a really few surprising names here. Like I said, Robert Toya is the blinding obvious one. I mean, it was because Murray Taulongi went down. He was, by all reports, going to be one winger. Then you would have had Holmes and Hammer in the centres together, which would have made sense. Then when he went down, you'd expect Selwyn Cobbo would have come into the team, who I would argue could have been there anyway. He's been really good at fullback for the Broncos and patches. And then he went down with a wrist injury. He's out for a number of weeks. And then Toya seems to be the last man standing, Stephen Bradbury style, to come into this team. At Queensland camp today, he did speak to the media as well on Monday. He said he was surprised as us to learn that he was in the team. Mate, what did you make of this Queensland side?
Look, looking at the side, a lot of it did make sense. And like you touched on, Cobbo being injured didn't help, and Murray being injured didn't help. And you start looking at the qrl.com.au eligible players of who could play in the back line, and you're looking pretty skint. I reckon if Howarth from the Melbourne Storm was still fit and raring to go like he was how he started the season, I reckon he probably would have been there ahead of Tor because he was killing it last year, killing it this year. Look, 10 games in, makes his debut in Origin, starting of all places. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. He looks like he's a humble guy from humble roots. Look, I wish him all the best, but look, you got to think back to Justin Hodges' debut. You always get scared when a guy who's very, very green makes his debut. And look, Hodges didn't do too well his very first game, but we do recall how he ended his career. So,
That's
look,
true.
he's against Latrell and Crichton in the centres, depending how they line up, because both those two centres can play both sides. So it depends which way they're going to line those guys up. Look, I don't know. Look, I don't know, to be honest. And looking at that back line as well, look, you look at Ponga. He had to have been there. Who else you can put there apart from Hammer? And you think about the Knights side as well. Look, a little early smoky for you. This is not financial advice. Gamble responsibly.
I wouldn't take your tips anyway, mate.
No. Ponga man of the match. And bear with me. When he's in the Knights team, he's got Fletcher Sharp, who's a rookie. He's not an organizer. He's a fantastic runner of the ball. He's a support player. He's not an organizer. Outside in the halves, you've got Jack Cogger, and you've also got Tyson Gamble. Those guys are good players in their own right, but are they starting caliber halfback in the NRL week in and week out? I think you'd say no. So you play the Knights, you nullify the half, then you've got a rookie who's a runner as the 5'8". Ponga's the only guy. You've nullified him because he's got to do everything. But now you've got him in a side with Munster, with DCE, with Grant. Like the pressure's off him. He doesn't have to be the savior. And I honestly think that if Ponga plays well, we win. If
No,
Ponga plays bad, we don't win.
No, I agree that Kalen Ponga, even though he has been in some of the worst form I could remember for him personally in recent seasons, not helped by Knights really being very poor themselves. I think every time he's had that pulled on that maroon jersey, I think he's always done a job, and I fully expect him. I mean, there was a case that Hammer was probably playing better, and you could have put him at fullback, but I think you can't put Kalen Ponga anywhere else, and I think when you put him in
No.
that Queensland jersey, he's got that Queensland spirit. I reckon we can say that, mate.
Yeah, he's
Um,
like Gagai. Gagai wears a Queensland jersey sometimes under his club jersey when he plays well.
Superman. Now, it's funny you say that, mate, because Robert Toyer, he's 20 years old. He's going to debut in State of Origin 1 at Suncorp Stadium, lining up against Latrell Mitchell. Is that really a good idea? Billy came out and said that he's a world-class player. How do we know? It's his first season. I don't know exactly what Billy's smoking, but I don't know if he's just backing himself, and that's a little bit of mind games. But we did have Dane Gagai, do we not? Is he not? I know he's getting on, but he's been playing solidly. He's been there
Mhm.
before. Completely overlooked. Have I missed something?
I think you just got to go down to the Knights' form. Being honest, he's back to the Knights, right? He's still,
But Ponga's there
yeah,
as well.
yeah. Look, I don't know. I think just the whole youth, the Roosters are going quite well, and I don't know. Gagai could have done a job there too. I think this Robert, from what I've seen, 10 games in, he's been pretty damn good. But like you said, Latrell, I think the game plan with Latrell is you hit him hard, you hit him early, you knock his confidence, he's out for the 80. That's how you get him out of the game. Can Robert wrap him up? I don't know. Like, you think Latrell's got a point to prove as well? Like, he had a bit of media stuff, and he seems to be ostracized in the media at times. I don't know if that's your part to play at all, Dane, but
Don't blame
it
me,
does
mate.
seem to be, it does seem that he has a love-hate relationship with the media. So look, he
Latrell,
might have, yeah, Latrell,
mate,
he might have a point to prove.
I could just tell you though, for all the things that's said about Latrell that are out there, every time I've been to Rabbitohs training, every time I've seen Latrell with fans, he might have this reputation, but I'm a massive fan of Latrell Mitchell because he spends time with fans. I've never seen him reject a photo. If there's a kid around, he'll make sure he makes his day. I was with a work experience girl out there the other day, and she was a massive fan. I said, Latrell, would you mind taking a photo with her? It's not like he hates the media or anything like this.
Mhm.
He just feels like I think he's been hard done by a few times before and doesn't want to be the center of attention like that. I know he's
Mhm.
got a bad reputation and people do think that, but I can tell you, every time I've had a dealing with Latrell Mitchell, he's been nothing but respectful, and he always has time for fans, and I think that's what you need to respect with him as well.
Mhm. I think also you think about it, he's one of the few that doesn't seem to be a media robot either. A lot of these guys being from all different walks of life, they don't have that natural presence about themselves to be very official. And he's just down to earth. He's himself. And sometimes in his favor and sometimes to his detriment, he speaks his mind. And that also might be why the media man might be in place, because he's too honest at times. You ask him a question and he tells you the truth, and it shocks some people because of that honesty. And that's a good quality for him to have. But he's not a media sweetheart because he'll tell you how it is. And a lot of people don't like that.
No, you are right because that goes two ways. And I know working in the media, you love when players speak their mind and they're an individual because that gives you the best quotes, it gives you the best
Mm,
grabs, it gives you the best headlines, the best content, the best hits, the best clicks. That's what it's all about. But that can go the other way too, because then he's always in the headlines. He's the one that generates these things. But we appreciate his honesty. And I love hearing when Latrell Mitchell speaks because I'm a massive fan of his game and the influence that he has on rugby league. So it is a shame that he won't be speaking during this series. So maybe if he kicks the winning field goal in game 3, things will change.
Hopefully.
Mate, so anyway, Robert Toya, interesting pick, but I do have faith in Billy as well. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. Jesse Arthur's being the extended. Geez, yeah. We just seem to be very light on there in the wings and centers. I think, yeah, Kalen Ponga we spoke about, you can't complain. Xavier Coates and Valentine Holmes, they're going to do a job, as is Hammer. Munster and DCE, I don't think there's any doubt that those were going to be our starting halves. Mo Fodawaker, probably a bit of a different one. I think this is what happened. Tom Gilbert, he would have been there in this side. He went down with a pec injury on the weekend. He was all out all of last year, I believe, an ACL. So very unfortunate run of injuries. But 2 years ago, he was great for Queensland. I think he would have been in the second row. I think Cotter would have been in Mo Fodawaker's spot with Tino as the starting props. And I think the Fodawaker would have been on the bench, and that's where Trent Loiero came in into that 17. I think he probably would have been the 18th man. That's just my speculation on how this team was supposed to look probably before this weekend came in. But Mo's done a job before. And obviously Tino wasn't there at all last year. I think he was sorely missed by a Queensland side that, of course, hasn't had Tom Flegler either. So they're big key losses. And Queensland just don't have as many forwards to choose from that New South Wales do. And
No,
I think that's right. That's been a big problem for them in recent years when New South Wales has this plethora. I know it's been a story for decades now, but it is hurting them at a time like this. Once there's a few injuries, you really see how much it hits them.
yeah, and look, I don't actually like Cotter in the back row. Like he plays a very great game as a lock and as a prop. If you actually think back to the first 3 Cowboys games where they lost 3 in a row, look at Cotter. Like if you go back and watch those highlights, he's doing a lot of arms tackles, and he hasn't been like that previously. So I generally don't know if he's carrying something. I don't know if his confidence was down to start the season, but he wasn't the Cotter that we know and love, where he's doing the grass cutting tackles around the ankles. He was arm grabbing, and he's not a player who does that. And he also he hasn't got a lot of lateral movement at times. So now you ask him to be in the back row, he'll do a job, and he's done a job there previously. But I just don't think like Jaden Sewer. He
Yeah,
was
good
playing
point.
fantastic football too.
Yeah,
Um,
he's done a job for
I
them
don't know what he
before.
had to do.
Yeah, no,
And I
no,
think my massive concern is just there's one prop on the bench. You've got Tino who's playing lock in club football. You've got Carrigan who's playing lock, but he's playing prop in club football. You look at it, you're going to expect Tino to play as a prop 60 to 70 probably. Carrigan's going to have to play 80. And you've got Collins as your sole prop on the bench. His first game back from injury was last week, and he's straight back in the Origin arena. So it's sketchy. It's sketchy.
I would say though with Collins, he has been there, done that, and he is a quality. He's proven that he is a state of origin player though
Hmm.
before. I think every time he's put on the maroon jersey, he hasn't let anyone down. So I understand not having the runs on the ball, but I mean you've got New South Wales with Zach Lomax, who only just came back for the first time. I know you could say it's slightly different, maybe backs and forwards, but I think speaking to those types of players and their coaches, they're doing a lot of work, behind the scenes, and I think they are going to get themselves up for it. So I'm not personally too worried about that. And I do think Fermor deserves his spot. I actually wasn't upset with that one at all. I think he's been in great form for the Titans. He's scored some tries. He's looked pretty good. He's been thereabouts the last couple of seasons. He's also had a shocking run with injury. Was it 2 years ago? I think it was an ACL.
Hmm.
So he's been out. And then, of course, I think everyone was hoping and thinking that Tom Dearden would still get a spot. He obviously, Munster wasn't there last year. Dearden did a great job. And I think he really, I know we say it, but he really does show that Queensland spirit. For a little guy, he still breaks the line. He finds a way through it. He doesn't give up in defense. He always seems to get there. And make those sort of try-saving tackles, or he plays a lot bigger than he is, and I think that he's a great player for Queensland. What did you make of him?
Look, he's probably got the strongest hips in the game. You
Those
see
hips don't
him
lie, baby.
run.
Shakira.
His hips don't lie. Shakira. Um, look, he is just so strong through his bottom half. He's breaking through tackles like it's nobody's business, and he's still got to think about when he chased down Cobbo in that Broncos vs Cowboys game in the corner. Like, he's a competitor. He's going to do a job. Is he going to do a good job at hooker? Are you going to expect Grant to play 80, and is he going to come in to play 13? I don't know what Billy's thinking. Grant also first game back from injury was last week, and now he's straight back in the Origin arena as well. So it'd be interesting to see where Dearden actually lines up. But look, if you look at the Queensland blueprint in the past, the hooker might, like when Cam Smith was playing in DC, was the 14. Cooper Cronk was in there as well. They just play 13 at the lock position, and they'd be an extra ball player. So it'd be interesting to see. But look, he's a great player, deserves to be there, and he probably is the incumbent to DC when DC finally hangs up at the age of 45. The guy is never.
He's not slowing down, is he?
No, he's not.
And mate, just I suppose overall too. I mean, it's the team gives me like almost 2020 vibes a little bit when you had Corey Allen and Edric and Branko Lee, and when it was like it's sort of just light on. That's giving me a little bit of you see Robert Toyer or Jesse Arthur's in this team. If anyone gets injured, like it's getting light on. I did just pull up the odds. Obviously, the first game is going to be at Suncorp on Wednesday, and I can't remember the first time I would have seen this, but Queensland are paying 220 outsiders in an opening Origin in Brisbane. Yeah, I'm sure Queenslanders are rubbing, licking their lips, but when's the last time you could think of that, mate? I mean, if not an even game, I know 220 doesn't seem like a lot, but in Origin, when you've got the home ground advantage in the first game of the series, that's almost writing them off.
Dare I say it, Dane? Are Queensland underdogs?
Are they?
Are Queensland underdogs?
Again?
We don't like that title, do we? We haven't proven time and time again that the underdogs come up. Look, Ponga man of the match, Queensland 1-12, Collins anytime, lock it in. Lock it in.
Again,
Put
I'm
in
going
your
to warn
sports
out.
bet, TAB.
I'm going to warn our
Sorry, was that?
audience. Tim doesn't win, so do not follow these bets. We do not
Hey,
endorse
that's not
gambling.
true. That's not true.
Um, I did want to say. Sorry, I did want to say too, just on that team, omissions. We didn't really talk about Queensland
Mhm.
omissions, and I did post it up, and one of our followers, Damon, did say Big Red is missing. And that is a good point because we talked about maybe Dane Gagai coming in for Toya, but we did sort of expect that Corey Horsburgh would find a spot in this team. He's been in pretty good form. I know he had an injury a couple of weeks, or the concussion, was it HIA, I think, a couple of weeks ago. He's been in pretty good form. He has played before, and he does sort of feel like an Origin player. He's a bit of a grunt player, which maybe they're missing almost a little bit. Were you surprised that he didn't get a spot at least on this bench?
I am, to be honest, because you look at the team and aggression. Trent Liero is an aggressive player in his own right, but you got to think back to when the Melbourne Storm played the Raiders, and Trent gave away a penalty with the ball in his hand when Pappy was going for a field goal because of the niggle in the game. He gave away two really dumb penalties in the last 10 minutes because of the niggle. You put him in the Origin arena where the niggle is on steroids. You're putting elbows in places where the elbows shouldn't be. And you're now expecting him to keep his cool coming off the bench saying, hey, you got 20 minutes, rip in, young man. How is he going to control that aggression? But then you've got Corey that is an aggressive player week in and week out. And he seems to be able to manage that aggression and play it accordingly. That's what I think the problem is that I I'm worried about Trainer Bates' aggression. But Corey, if he was in that position, look, he has Corey's got a bloody kicking game. Do you see some of these little
Jeez,
rubbers he's putting in?
slow down,
He's
mate.
he's great. I love Corey. I love Big Red. I think he should have been there because look, Trent plays lock, but he doesn't really dabble too much in the prop. It is lock and prop these days, pretty much the same thing. But Corey does play both often, and he does understand the differences between the two. Big Red, I think, would have been better there. And honestly, I don't know what he's done not to be there. He's been great still. So
Yeah.
I don't know what Billy's smoking.
That's my line. I like niggle on steroids. That's what you had me out there, mate. Yeah, look, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, Queensland have been hit, but in Billy, I think Queensland Maroons, we do trust. And Laurie Daley, it's going to be interesting with these two teams. I am surprised that Queensland are going to be outsiders in Brisbane, but that's what happens. Anyway, now it heads to camp. Now, Queensland are mixing things up a little bit this year. They're going to be on the Sunshine Coast at Twin Waters as opposed to camp on the Gold Coast. So that's going to be a little bit different for them. Whereas for New South Wales, they went to the Blue Mountains under Madge last year. They did it in Coogee in years prior, which, if you're not from Sydney, I mean, that's more of like a popular beachy spot, whereas the Blue Mountains is like an hour and a half drive outside of Sydney. It's very isolated. They built a little gym in the hotel there where they can all train. So they'll be there for the rest of the week. And by all reports, Laurie did come in and talk to the players about whether that's what they wanted. They said they loved it. It gives them a chance to connect. There's a golf course out there, beautiful scenery. It gets bloody cold, but it seems to be what they like. It gets them away from the hustle and bustle, and they seem to be really connected as a team. And yeah, as far as Queensland, maybe a little bit of change of scenery for them. But what's the vibe in Brisbane, man? What's the vibe in Queensland around this team today?
Look, I think a lot of us are kind of what the hell, to be honest.
It's a
I
good
think there's a
start.
bit of it. I think there is a bit of it just seeing some of the names, but then you look at it, there are a lot of injuries in the Queensland side. Like I think you touched on it, like Robert Toa, like you look at it initially, you're like, oh, what the hell? But then you kind of drill down, well, who's available? Like who's going to play that role? Look, I think like if you look at it, Bo Fermor been killing it, and we all
Yeah,
know that Billy loves that guy who can play the backline cover. That's what Kurt Capewell was last year. I think Cobbo even played a bit of as that position play. He played a bit of forwards when he was at number 17. I think the team has the ability to do a job. I think look if Coates and Lomax are on the same side of the field, that aerial battle alone,
that's a
wow,
sexy duel for sure.
that is a very sexy
It's
duel.
like Coates, that
Um,
leaping try on the weekend, incredible, incredible.
I still remember his debut, Shark Park, when he was playing for the Broncos. I think his first try, I think he may have scored a double that day, but he did something very similar. And you go, this guy's got it. I hope he stays a Bronco for life. And now
Didn't
he's at Storm.
happen. I mean,
No, it didn't happen.
gave me some Israel Folau vibes on the weekend too with
Oh,
that leap.
easy.
Yeah,
And look, I think one of the things that I would have changed in the back line is I would have put Hammer at wing and put Holmes in the center. And
well, I
my
think
logic is being
that was the original plan. Oh, sorry, for both of them to be in the centers, but obviously those injuries with how long he would have been on the wing, Holmes would have been
I would
inside.
swap 'em.
Yeah,
The reason being is Loma. I think you touched on before. Cleary and Moses, their kicking game is phenomenal. The amount of height that Cleary can get on some of his bombs. Hammer's out the back all the time during the aerial battle and defusing bombs. Holmes, look, he was a fullback for a long time, but he now is in the center. He's not defusing bombs day in and day out, leaping in the air. Hammer is. And I think I would have liked Hammer to play. I think it was Turbo in Perth a few years ago where he was named at the wing, but he wasn't playing wing. He
mm,
was in the middle of the field. He was roaming. I think it would have been nice just to put Hammer on the wing, let him roam, play that very similar role, but also has the ability to defuse the bombs. Look, Holmes is a tremendous athlete. I think it was the New York Jets he had the trial with. He's fantastic.
that's right. Yeah, did well.
Um, but look, it's a solid team. There's a bit of speed in that back line. Um, it'd be interesting because where do we go from here? Like, I think Reese Walsh on form, you wouldn't put him back in the team. Cobbo, if his wrist is buggered, he'll be out for a month. Murray's calf, I don't know how long that's going to be for. So
David
if the
Fafita
backline,
plays park football now. Okay.
sorry,
David
David
Fafita
Fafita.
plays park football almost these days.
Look, who was it? Who picked Michael Jennings from reserve football to play Origin one year?
Uh,
Which was coach from that? Like, hey, there's history on the side that a cup player can play Origin.
yeah, I know.
Look, I just don't know. If the team doesn't fire just because of injuries, I'm not quite sure it's in the back line alone who comes in because there's not really anyone either A, available or B, in form.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And you compare that to New South Wales, and I know this isn't a news story, but you know, love, we didn't even touch on Tom Trbojevic has just been left out of this team. He's nothing wrong with him. It's just that they couldn't fit him in. Laurie Daley said it was a little bit of
Nothing
mixture
wrong
of
with him.
form
He's
and
got
injury.
one leg.
Well, you know, he's still working on things, but I mean, he's playing for Manly. You know, he's available to select.
Mm.
I mean, I don't think they did anything wrong by leaving him out. I don't think you could leave Crichton or Latrell has been incredible
No.
lately, and To'o and Lomax were there last year, totally deserved their spots. But I mean, I'm just saying, you had him. I think Bradman Best ended up going down. You did have him. They could have easily chosen Tedesco, wouldn't have looked out of place. They could have had Jerome Luai, it wouldn't have looked out of place. They could have had Terrell May, like we talked about, wouldn't look out of place. So they just have a plethora of these players. I mean, even Hamole Olakuatu, I think he's a great player. He can't get into the team. Campbell Graham, the 18th man, solid, but they just have so many to choose from. And I think this is just one of those situations for Queensland where, like you said, Reece Walsh was an interesting one. He probably didn't deserve to get picked on form, but then you could argue that Ponga probably didn't really either. So no one was really
Mm.
putting their hand up at fullback. We know Tom Flegler's been out, unfortunately, with that nerve issue that just hasn't been able to come back. He's sorely missed because they just don't have those depths with those big props.
Mm.
That's where they're lacking as well. Like Mo Fotuaika, nothing wrong with this game, but there's no one really to go with Tino in that big man sort of department. I mean, you got Paddy at lock,
Mm.
which is great. But just have one more big body like that would be a big help to this team. So it's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be interesting. I didn't
It's
want
gonna
to.
be, yeah.
I didn't want to say it publicly, but like I must say, there's no doubt. I mean, obviously, I'm a Queenslander, even though I'm deeply entrenched in New South Wales territory. But yeah, this is one of those series where it's tough to get super excited about Queensland's chances, even though I know it's Origin and it is probably going to change because we do love the underdog tag. But New South Wales do have a great team with form players. And I do really like the halves they've gone with. And Laurie, obviously, the question is out on him as a coach, but I can just tell you from being around that whole team environment today, he's calm, he's cool, he's collected. The players are buying in. They've been it all before. And you look at last year's series too, they're relatively sort of unchanged in a lot of positions. There's a lot of players that were there last year and they've had this series to grow. I know Queensland obviously have a lot of returning players as well, but I can get some real positive vibes coming out of that place. Obviously, they've only just won the one in a row. New South Wales love to bottle a one in a row streak, but it is going to be an interesting series, right?
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think, look, it kind of got a little bit boring at times when Queensland were the best team because you just know we're going to win. So
Whoa,
I think it'd be
blasphemy,
interesting.
mate. Blasphemy. What are you talking about?
You know what I mean? Like it's just like it'd be better competition
Are you talking
if
about the eight in
Blues.
a row?
No, no, maybe
But
we can cut the stuff out later.
if you cast your mind back though, that eight in a row was never a sure thing. There was only one whitewash in that entire run. And I remember the 2020 game where Cooper Cronk had to kick like a 40-meter field goal to win it in game three.
On an
So
angle, on an angle too.
yeah, so when you cast back, I know in hindsight now you might look back and think it was easy, but I never remember any of those series thinking that Queensland absolutely had it. Like I said, there's only one whitewash in it. So I know sometimes they might have won
I
the
was more optimistic. I always knew.
yeah, but yeah, we'll see, man. But like I said, this is perfectly the stage is set. We know what happened in 2022. Queensland, the underdogs against the ropes, Billy's against the back. People are questioning his selections like we've just done. And what's going to happen? Probably going to come out and prove everything wrong. Or New South Wales will prove that when they've got the players, the talents, they can come out and smash them. But usually that doesn't happen either. And mate, that's why we love State of Origin.
And can I get a Dane hot tip for the game?
Mate, look, it's too. I don't know. I haven't really thought about analysis yet, mate. I'm just getting my head around the teams today, being in camp. I am going to be in Brisbane from Sunday, covering the team in the lead up. I'll be at the game, covering the game, in the sheds potentially as well after the game, which I've done in previous years. But look, the fact that it's in Brisbane, I was thinking about this the other day, but when I was growing up. home ground advantage used to mean a lot, right? I know you would have had a similar
Mm.
thing, but I remember back in the day, this is before they started really taking a game to Melbourne and Adelaide and Perth to spread the game. If you had a series with two in Brisbane or two in Sydney, you really liked your
Yeah.
chances. But obviously, you remember those days, right? But that's changed a lot in recent years because there's a neutral venue introduced, which I think is good too. I think Melbourne, Adelaide, and Perth deserve a chance. Of course, game two is going to be in Perth. But that's changed this year. And obviously, New South Wales, which I asked a lot of the players about in their media day, they broke that hoodoo at Suncorp last year. And they were a little bit tight lipped about whether they think that's going to be a confidence boost. But you'd have to think it is, right? That was a tough, classic, grinding game three. They got the job done. Nathan Cleary admitted, yeah, he told me, he was like, yeah, I think it will. The other players are a bit more tight lipped, but Nathan Cleary was like, no, it is. And that's going to be the concern. They've sort of broken that trust. They've won the last game, which is the very last game. Now they're back at Suncorp again with some Queensland, a debutant, a few question marks about some of the players' forms. So New South Wales is going to be licking their lips little bit, but that's the perfect Queensland setup.
I
That's
know.
what they're waiting for, right? They're waiting for that,
Ambush,
baby.
baby. Ambush.
That's the classic Queensland ambush. But anyway, Tim, look, that's going to be, mate. I know you're going to be loving it. Do you have any plans where you're going to be watching game one?
Look, if I get some tickets, I'll be a very happy boy. But look, I think you can appreciate, Dane, that we're now in our mid 30s. We're not what we were 10 years ago, where we could drink all night on a Wednesday and back it up at work.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm a little bit different, but I still have many fond memories in your backyard, Dane. Shout out to Tracy and Nan. There's some very fond memories.
A lot of beer
A lot of
pong.
parties, a lot of beer pong. So it'd be nice to relive those days, but we all live very different lives. Some of us are married, some of us got partners, kids. We're all got responsibilities now, so we can't have a sneaky sick day on a Thursday anymore. Doesn't quite make sense. There's no more RE on a Wednesday night.
Shout
So
out to the RE, Toowong,
uh,
Brisbane.
if you've never been to the RE, you haven't lived.
We were there 3 times a week back in the uni days. Mate, look, that's really depressed me. Don't suck the life out of this. I mean, and to be fair, I cover Origin now for work, so I don't get to do that either, but I really love what I do, and I
Does it
can't wait.
really work?
Exactly, mate. When you know you love your job, it doesn't always feel like work. So I will be there covering Queensland in the lead up. I will be there at Suncorp Stadium next Wednesday night. I cannot wait. 52,500 mad screaming Queenslanders, a few hundred, maybe a few thousand New South Wales fans in there as well. So I think the stage is set, mate. Classic storyline, Origin, game one. Bring it on.
And just one quick note: is Alfie going to be running the waters?
That's true. Sack for Brisbane. He needs a job. Why not? It makes sense to me.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Has the sacking of Alfie been the reason why the Broncos have been so inconsistent?
Now we're getting deep into the Queensland conspiracy theory. All right, Tim, on that
Yeah.
note, mate, I'm going to let you go. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope your Broncos, our Broncos, can turn it around. Good luck with the tiny hands. And thanks a lot for joining on Season Ticket Holders.
Thanks, Dane. Appreciate it, mate.
Thanks a lot, Tim. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Can't wait for Origin. Take care. Speak to you
One,
soon.
two,
Bye bye.